Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. I'm Irina, I'm the host here. My guest today is the owner of the very interesting yarn festival called Indie Untangled. Lisa Chamoff, welcome to my channel.
Hi, Irina. Thanks for having me.
So Indie Untangled takes time right before Rhinebeck in upstate New York, right before New York Ship and Wool. And this year it's happening on October 20th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me how it all started. What gave you an idea to start this festival?
So I started Indie Untangled in the spring of 2014. So it started out as a website, a marketplace, online marketplace that promoted indie dyers and makers of other accessories, also designers. And I live in New York. I live in New York City. And I had been going to Rhinebeck every year, I guess, since 2011, and went with a big group of friends from Ravelry, and we booked a member of our group blocked rooms in the Best Western. I think at that time it was called the Holiday Inn. And so we gathered there on the Friday night before the festival. Everybody was coming into town. We just all sat around and chatted and brought food, and we're knitting and crafting. And then there were a few people in our group who dyed yarn or sewed project bags, and they would bring like suitcases full of their yarn or other products, and we would have like a little trunk show, I guess, before the festival started. And that was one of my favorite parts of the weekend, was just seeing not that there, I love shopping at the festival, but it was just like a more intimate experience, a little less overwhelming. I got to talk to the person who dyed my yarn without tons of people around. And so after I started Indie Untangled around April 2014, I was going to Rhinebeck that year, of course, and just thought kind of turning that like Friday night thing into like an official show, because I was working with so many of the dyers and project bag makers that were coming to Rhinebeck. And it's also like a longstanding festival. It's the application process, it can be hard to get in as a new vendor. So I thought it would be nice to do something. And also there are yarn shops in the area that do special things the days before. So yeah, so that's how it started. So I started out by renting a small ballroom at the Best Western. And then over the years, it expanded into like the full ballroom, and then there's a room next to it. And then in 2018, we moved to a larger space in Saugerties, where it was for a couple of years. Then in 2020, we did a virtual show, and a couple of years ago, we moved it to its current location, which is hits on the Hudson, an equestrian facility in Saugerties, and has these beautiful open pavilions, views of the Catskill Mountains, and it's just a nice little warm up to the weekend.
How did it change as far as like amount of people attending this festival? Because you started with just like some of your friends. What is it like now?
So yeah, when it started out, I asked, I think like about a dozen dyers. There were a couple of designers who set up racks with their samples. And then like Bare Naked Wool, Ann Hansen's, I guess, milled yarn company came in the first year. So it was about a dozen vendors. And I remember like I had a little clicker because I was trying to make sure, we had a good amount of people in the room. And I think it was like 225 to 250. And then it just kept getting bigger after that as more people found out about it. And so this year we expect like over 1,400 people. So, and it's a huge open space, and people can come and just hang out and relax during the day. We have about 30 vendors.
Well, how do you go about picking who is going to be the vendors? Like, how do you find new vendors or who applies?
Yeah, so a lot of the dyers who post on Indie Untangled. So I have a online marketplace and a newsletter that goes out every Friday where I write about all the new colors and kits and things like that. So a lot of those dyers vendors apply, and then I just meet others at festivals, or I coordinate a newcomer pavilion at H&H Americas, which is the show where we met.
Right.
And yeah, so a few of the vendors from the pavilion are going to be there. And so in the year, like when I first started, it was basically just I emailed a bunch of people and asked if they wanted to participate. And then I guess in the years after that, like I had a more formal application process. And I also, I guess starting like a few years ago, maybe with when we moved to the bigger space in Saugerties, I established a jury. So members of the community who I know or who people I know are connected with, and they provide feedback on the kinds of things and people they'd like to see at the show, since it's not, I'm not the only one shopping. So like, for example, I'm not a spinner. So there may be a dyer who specializes more in fiber. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned that Rhinebeck, like because it's an old established show, it's very difficult for newer dyers to get in. Do you feel like there is an increased amount of dyers that approach you because of that issue?
I think it's I mean, I think that's like kind of the ultimate goal of pretty much any yarn company, because it's a wonderful show. And actually there have been quite a few vendors that have either done my show or have applied and then gotten into the festival. And actually, yeah, so like one of them, Plied Yarn Company, which is run by Ann Weaver, and had been Karita of Neighborhood Fiber Company, who's been a Rhinebeck vendor for many years, had been involved. And Ann and Plied Yarn Company got into the show this year. So yeah, I feel like the opportunity has been increasing for those vendors to get a spot in the show. I think Katrinkles also, she makes wooden fiber tools. I just found out she's doing the Festival of Rhinebeck this year. So I think maybe it's changing a little bit, like maybe because of 2020 and right. A lot of vendors, took a break, and so it opened up a lot of room for new companies. So I think a lot of companies still apply. But yeah, I feel like it's been shifted, or it's just seeing like the dyers and vendors I've worked with kind of, graduate to Rhinebeck. It's also a really big show. It's, the full weekend. It's, some of the spaces are outdoors, so it can be like a little intimidating for a smaller company, especially a lot of, there are quite a few dyers I work with who, it's crazy how much, yarn they have to dye or stock they have to prepare before a show like that.
Let me know a little bit about like what goes into preparation for a festival like this. Like, when do you start preparing? What's the process like? What's the most stressful thing about it?
I mean, I guess I would say I'm kind of like always working on it. The key moments, especially like starting with a new venue, I guess that's when it's really the most challenging, because you're figuring out where people go and where people are going to hang out and where you're going to do registration. Like when I had the show and it was much smaller and I did it at the hotel, hotel, it was, I guess, easier to envision because it was a smaller area. But then that got a little more challenging because, you know, a lot of people were coming and the hotel is a public space. So it was, you know, it was hard to manage the flow of people in a space that like I I didn't run myself. Yeah, I guess the application process usually starts like in the winter. I think like January, February is when I start really planning for the show. People apply, I make the selection in May, and then in recent years, I've been putting tickets on sale in June, kind of before H&H Americas, and before I get busy with that. And then actually kind of around now is when like we really start ramping up the promotion and posting about the vendors, and then the Dyers start dyeing things and posting preview pictures. So
talk about the marketing part, because it's one thing for you to like decide that like, oh, I'm going to invite a few friends and we're going to see what's going to happen, where now it's like a full-time occupation and you have to like, and you are one woman show, so you're doing it all pretty much. Like, tell me how that goes. Like, how did you learn about how to market this thing?
Well, so I guess for a few years it was mainly myself, and then I did work with some of the vendors at the show to shape things. I wanted their feedback. My friend Vicky, who's one of the knitting friends who I attended Rhinebeck with in that group, she used to have a project bag making business called That Clever Clementine. I have to definitely give her a shout out because she was really my sounding board in those early years as I was getting things going. And then in 2018, when we moved to Saugerties, it's kind of a nice story. So I found out that I had a neighbor, someone who lived across the street from me, who had gone to the Indie Untangled event and posted their haul. And then I found out they lived across the street from me and was an event planner. So Patrina Hicks has been working with me for, I guess, yeah, since 2018. And as an event planner, you know, I really got a crash course in running a show. And I have to say that really helped ramp up the event and help with my experience managing vendor, you know, as the number of vendors increased and attendees too.
Tell me about your volunteers, because I'm sure those are the most important people for the show.
Yeah, so it's a great group of people. Many of them have been either attending the show since the beginning or towards the beginning, or have been volunteering for many years, and some just join us, are just joining us this year. We have a group of maybe like 30 or 40 people who help with like welcoming, greeting people, helping guide people, answering questions. We have a lounge area and also photo frames and a nice little like photo op area. And there'll be other ones this year, which I'm excited about. But the volunteers help facilitate taking photos, and it's just a nice way to participate in the show and just you know, and help us out and kind of feel a part of making the event what it is.
Well, if somebody wants to volunteer for the next year, how do they go about it?
There are some spots available for this year still. I think we still need a little help, like in the photo area and the lounge space, and maybe a couple of greeters. There's an application they can fill out online. I think it's just the URL is indieuntangled.com trunk show volunteering with dashes between the words. And so if somebody volunteers, they get a swag bag and a t-shirt to wear that day, and then they can come and help us out for a couple of hours or a few hours, depending on the tasks that we need them for. And you get a free ticket to the show, so to shop whichever shopping period you'd like.
It sounds
We'd love new volunteers.
You guys wanted that swag bag. I saw it. It's beautiful, actually. Let's talk about the swag bag. Tell me about like how you go about designing it, like who designed that logo there, and like change from year to year. Is it like the same thing?
So I started working, I guess it was I think it was 2016, with Eloise Narrigan. So she's an illustrator based in Rhode Island. And I found her through Ravelry. I believe she had been a finalist in a design contest that Ravelry had run, and she had designed this really cute like fiber alphabet. So it was like the letters of the alphabet kind of illustrated with different fiber things. And I love her aesthetic, and she illustrates really adorable animals. So I hired her to design the first bag in 2016. And then the ideas kind of changed. Like, I think the first year she just drew various fiber things like skeins and a spindle. And then she moved, the next year we did more animals. And then I think the year after that, they sort of changed to like more human-like animals, like standing up and walking around. And yeah, so she worked on the illustrations, I think through 2020 or 2021 is the last one that she did. And then she changed direction in the work that she does, doing more, I think, like children's illustrations. So I had another designer last year, and then this year for the 10th anniversary, I worked with Jessica McGurl of First Pancake Studios. So she designed that beautiful illustration, and it's very, I guess, fall and rustic. And yeah, so I basically just ask her to, I guess we talk about sort of the vision for that year's event. And I think she just, she gave me a couple of different options, but we went with the one that has people in it, because I think it's just a nice way to like imagine yourself being at the event. And this year's illustration has like this huge skein of yarn, and it just sort of encapsulates like the feeling of being at the show.
So if you guys want to get this bag, you know what to do. I'll put the link in the description of this video, and you can volunteer, get yourself free swag bag, and also help out, meet some new people, and you get free ticket to shop there.
Yes.
When you started, did you have vision? Did you have a business plan, or did you just go into it thinking like, let's see what's going to happen?
I think it was more the latter. I knew from starting Indie Untangled that I'd really kind of captured like it sounds hokey, but it was sort of like a magical moment in time, because the enthusiasm for indie dyed yarn was really ramping up. And like I recognized that just as a knitter myself who loved indie dyed yarn. And it was a moment in time, there would be certain dyers would have shop updates that sold out in like 5 minutes. And it felt like just an exciting time. And I think what the show has become is pretty much sort of like my wildest dreams for it. I mean, there are other events that have more vendors and, have a lot more people, but my vision for the event was really for it to be just like starting off the weekend. The festival is wonderful. It's just an amazing experience, in New York in the fall, and the leaves are changing, and you go to this huge festival and it's overwhelming, but in a nice way, and just like meeting people that you've only seen online, or getting to spend time with friends who live around the country. And so I always envision this as just like a slightly calmer and just smaller like version of the festival, or just like a good way to get started on a weekend. And
do you feel like, because people are coming with their, like, some people are saving all year to bring their budget, like Rhinebeck budget, right? Like I hear it all the time that I have my Rhinebeck budget and I'm gonna go and shop, and then you tempt them with your festival.
Right.
Like, is it like tempting enough for them to empty their Rhinebeck budget at your festival?
Well, I guess I always say like that Indie Untangled doesn't count against your Rhinebeck budget. So like realistically, you should. And I know it's hard. I mean, I always come in without a plan, and then, or I have a small plan and it ends up, going by the wayside when I see certain things. But yeah, I feel like Rhinebeck in general, like has always sort of had that feeling of, it's like this once in a lifetime opportunity. There are so many wonderful yarn shops in the area as well. And it's, a fantastic way to support those small businesses too. So I guess I see it. I mean, it's, as yarn collectors, it can be hard to, I guess, determine like what's going to be your budget. But yeah, I guess
like the way you said it, because I do think of it as yarn collecting. It's not necessarily, like I always say that my yarn buying and my pattern buying and my knitting are like 3 different hobbies that have nothing to do with each other, actually.
Right. Exactly. Like occasionally they can overlap, but yeah, I have a lot of skeins in my stash where it's like, I just, I connect to where I was when I bought it and what it looks like, what it's inspired by, and just looking at that alone is enough. So,
well,
yeah,
it's another question I had about the festival. So because it grew so much and because so many people now coming to it, you divide it into the time slots. Do you feel like that might change in the future? Like if it continues to grow, do you feel like that limits the experience, or do you, because it's only like you have what, hour and a half?
So I guess our conversations about the time slots have been ongoing, and I think for at least for this year, it works for the space that we have. So the marketplaces, they're divided up into 2. So the space that we use has 2 covered pavilions. They have hard floors. The property itself is all grass, and it's important to have those hard floors, in case it rains. So, and then also, so the pavilions are open, but I've felt that, especially for a Friday event, people are coming into town. They may have, other plans with friends or dinner plans. So it's an ongoing discussion, I guess I would say. So I do want to guarantee people to have an opportunity to know that they have a time period where they're not going to be in a huge crowd and struggling to get the attention of the vendor. And then also have a period where they can stay and hang out and relax. A lot of shows that I go to, and I go to a lot of fiber festivals, they get really busy in the beginning because everybody, wants to have the first opportunity to get things, or they're just really excited, or they have plans later in the day and they want to start their shopping in the beginning. And then towards the end, there's hardly anyone there. And I feel like it's also a little tricky for the vendors, because they're so busy, and then it's, it's dead. And it's nice and relaxing to have that time to take a breather. But with the way the time slots work, they're designed so they don't have so many people, so you can shop in a relaxed way. And then towards the end, it gets a little less intense and the vendors have a chance to take a break. And then they have another wave that they can of people. And the way we're structuring it too is that we're not in the past, like especially when we've had an indoor venue, we've had to move everyone out because of capacity issues. But since we have such an open space, people are welcome to stay. We'll have a nice lounge set up with tents and chairs and tables and food trucks. And then if somebody wants to go shopping again, they're perfectly welcome to do that. I think we're just trying to structure it so that it's not so intense at the very beginning.
Right. And you also price it differently for different time slots. What was the logic behind that? Like, why did you decide to go from the most expensive packages early in the morning, including the swag bag, and going like cheaper and cheaper as the day progresses?
Yeah, so I think that people who come to that or want to come to that first time slot are kind of the more devoted shoppers. And again, like a lot of festivals I go to, that's like when the biggest crowds are. So that I guess the structuring of the fee is just to I guess just sort of acknowledge that the beginning is kind of the most popular time. And then for people who really just want like a more relaxed time, or, are not worried that like a specific thing isn't there, has sold out, they can pay less money. And also it's later in the day, so there's less just time in the event overall.
Well, I know that at Rhinebeck there are some dyers that make specific colorway just for Rhinebeck, and that's usually why people go like extra early on Saturday just to grab those special skeins. Do you encourage the dyers that apply to your festival to do the same?
Yes, so a lot of them do. I do encourage it, but I think it's just natural that dyers are really excited about the event, and so they bring that into their dyeing, and they want to create something that will commemorate the show. So yeah, a lot of dyers do special colorways, or they'll do kits as well. And yeah, so it's a really nice part of the festival.
Do you have a favorite food truck?
Oh, well, I will say there was a food truck that we were supposed to have in I guess it was 2021, but they had to pull out at the last minute just due to COVID reasons. But there was a mac and cheese truck that was going to be at the show, and I think they're going to be here this year. So I'm really excited to try out their mac and cheese, because that's my jam.
Do you have time to get some food or like to breathe at the festival, like when it's actual the day of the festival?
Yeah, so I do actually, and so I'm very fortunate to so one of the things I've learned over the years and through Patrina, who has run so many events, that it's important to have so the volunteers are very important, very helpful. But we also have a core group of staff that help me out with the event. And so they're there the entire day. And so it's they're great, just really on the ball and just really helpful. Like I feel like I can kind of take a breath and just know that things are being taken care of. And then I think a lot of the work, it really happens the day before and then also in the morning for setting up. And I think once that's done, it's I can I can take a breath and enjoy the event, which makes me really happy because, you know, I work hard all year, and it is nice to get to enjoy it. So and it's nice. My mom has been helping me out. I think since the second year. The first year kind of, you know, didn't know what to expect, so I went up by myself, but she has been really enthusiastic, and yeah, comes up and just helps with various things. Like she's done so that I've done pre-orders before of some of the show colorways, so she's helped me out with that. Then last year she became our golf cart shuttle driver, so we have a golf cart that runs between the two pavilions, because it's a few minutes walk, and it's nice to, you know, people may need the shuttles to get through between the pavilions. So she's really enthusiastic and loves it, and I think everybody loved her driving last year. So
Is there something special you do for vendors for them to feel appreciated as well?
Yeah, so we've had coffee for the vendors, and this year we're gonna have coffee and some breakfast items. And yeah, I'd love to do some sort of like vendor gathering, but it gets very crazy during setup and everybody's really busy during the weekend. But yeah, so coffee is very important. We always make sure to do that. Also the food trucks do let the vendors kind of cut the line to get priority to make sure they can get their food quickly, since they want to, you know, stay in their booths and meet people.
Right. Oh, that's lovely. How do you think that festival changed you as a person? Like, how are you different from 2013?
That's a very interesting question. I think I've definitely learned so much about events and just the industry in general, and like what vendors need at a show. I guess what they're expecting in terms of how it's organized and how it's marketed. And I enjoy collaborating with the vendors. So, you know, if they're creating a special colorway, making sure that people know about it. And I guess I've sort of learned a little bit more about what I like at festivals and what I want from a festival. So, for example, I guess it was, I think maybe in 2018, I started creating a shopping guide. So like when I think about going to a festival, I often don't have a plan, but I like to try to have one. And a lot of times for festivals, it involves like you have to be on Instagram and like make sure you see everybody's post about their special color. But so I decided it would be a great idea to create a guide so that before they, you know, before people come through the door, so to speak, they know, like, have a sense of what each vendor has that's special, or like specific bases that they're bringing. And that, I think that's been something that people have really liked, and it's kind of helped yeah, I guess better organize the show and sort of like it's more, it aligns with my mission in general running Indie Untangled, which has always been to inform people about what's out there, and share the stories behind the Dyers, because there's so much inspiration there, and there's just so much work that goes on behind it. So it's nice to highlight like those special things that they're doing just for a show.
Right. Well, when you think about the Dyers, like is that a consideration, like to check their story to make sure that it aligns with your values as a person?
Yeah, that's been very important, especially, you know, as many more vendors apply to the show than I have space for, just because, you know, the physical space, but also just it's more manageable to work with a smaller group of vendors and help them stand out. You know, when you have a larger show, it's a bit overwhelming, and especially if they have like a strong brand story, nice backstory. Like for example, there's a vendor, the Sheepy Shire, who's new this year to the show, and it's a dyer and her husband, and they work together to dye the colorways, and they have like this friendly little competition where they each create a colorway, and then whoever sells, I think it's whoever sells the least has to like cook or buy dinner that week or something like that. So it's like fun little things like that that I like to share with people, because I mean, buying yarn is one thing, but you know, when you're shopping at a festival like this and supporting small makers, you're really buying into their story and who they are as people. So it's important to have vendors who, you know, have good values and just tell a story that resonates with people.
Well, when you started, it was sort of like more of a let me meet these people, let me get to know them, and if I'm gonna cover my expenses, so much the better.
Right, exactly.
Now it's a full-time business. Do you ever like look back and ask yourself, like, why the heck did I start that? Do you have any regrets of going into this kind of business, or is it fulfilling?
I would say not so much regret. It's just sort of managing my feelings about um being I guess being a knitter, being a maker, and working in that space. So I've always I guess so, like my background kind of relevant. So I worked as a newspaper reporter for many years. So before starting Indie Untangled, I was a daily newspaper reporter, and I covered, you know, town meetings, Board of Education, and I enjoyed it. It was kind of fulfilling to make connections in the community and tell stories, but the industry is very volatile, and so I got laid off in 2013, which kind of prompted me starting Indie Untangled. And it's one of those things where, you know, at the time it was, you know, devastating to have lost your job and kind of have to figure out what's next in your life. But I also look back on that time as like this sort of amazing, like gratifying moment where I was able to, like, I didn't necessarily like have this plan for years to start a business. It just sort of, I had an idea and it happened. And I mean, I've met just so many wonderful people, and I still had done some like part-time freelance journalism while I was starting up Indie Untangled. And I've always liked like having different outlets. So if like things got so crazy and hectic with the business, I could just, you know, retreat into doing something else. And I think so that the challenges of running a business more pretty much full time is that there's less of that. You know, there are always things to do. And while I definitely really enjoy running Indie Untangled, there are times when it's like, oh, I wish I could just do something else for a little while. And I, of course, you know, I knit, you know, constantly, you know, try to knit a little bit every day. So it can be tricky to like balance. And so fortunately, I don't knit samples, or like, I'm not a designer. So the knitting time I do have is usually more personal. but sometimes, so like I'll be knitting for Indie Untangled and Rhinebeck, and it's like I kind of have this self-imposed deadline, so that can, or there's a yarn club and I'm knitting for that. So there can be some.
Let's talk about your Rhinebeck wardrobe. What's
Okay,
coming,
yeah, sure.
what's coming with you? Like how difficult it is for you to plan, like what exactly coming, and how early do you start planning for it?
So I haven't started my Rhinebeck or Indie Untangled sweaters yet, but I do have ideas, and it can be tricky to knit for it because the weather is, I'm sure if you've
Right.
been there, could be like,
Unpredictable.
yes, unpredictable for sure. So like I guess it was more 2 years ago, it was like in the 70s and hot and sunny. And so fortunately, I don't know, somehow I had some sort of I was prescient or something, and I knit a short sleeved sweater. And I guess I figured, oh, I'll just, I'll wear it over something if it ends up being cool. But I don't know. I guess somehow I had it in the back of my mind. There have been many years where it's been much warmer. So like, yeah, fingering weight sweaters are usually the better option for that weekend because it can still keep you warm if it's actually chilly, but then doable, at least for me, if it's warmer than that.
So do you have your sweater at least like the pattern planned?
I think so. So I bought a sweater quantity from, I think it's pronounced Zala wool. It's a Spanish, she's a Spanish company. So it's sheep that are raised in Spain and then milled there as well. And so I've been swatching. I think I'm making a sweater, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's from Making Stories magazine, one of their previous issues. And it's plain with like a cable down the side. So I'm thinking I'm gonna make that, but I still have to block my swatch and make sure I get gauge. And then yeah, there's another sweater I'm hoping to make eventually. It's called the Double Date Sweater by Winter's Weather Knits. And it's a Gilmore Girls inspired sweater. And it has this beautiful slip stitch striped color work. So I have yarn for that. And I'm thinking, so a friend of mine, my friend Kathy, who's going to be helping me out in the booth at Indie Untangled, might be making one of her own. So I think we're thinking about maybe coordinating, but I still have to swatch for that as well. So yeah, and it's a hard decision because it's also a weekend. So I need to knit at least a couple of things. But there might be like a wardrobe change on Friday, depending on what I finish.
Well, I hope to see it in person, and we'll snap some pictures. And if you guys watching and you're coming to Indie Untangled or Rhinebeck, stop me and show me what you're wearing. I would love to see what you made for Rhinebeck. And I'm actually not a true believer in Rhinebeck sweater because I believe you can wear anything. Like it can be Rhinebeck hat or Rhinebeck gloves or Rhinebeck shawl, anything goes. So whatever you made and you're bringing there, I'd love to see it. Well, thanks so much, Lisa. Thank you for being a guest of my channel, and I hope to see you soon at Indie Untangled. So it's October 20th from 10 to 4 at Heat of the Hudson. Thank you so very much for being my guest today and telling us all about the festival.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice chatting with you, and I look forward to seeing you in October.
Thank you.